When we think about design, we usually think about making things look great or work really fast. But today, we're going to flip that idea on its head. We're going to explore how looking at design through the lens of disability can help us create things that are better for everyone.
So, let's start with a number that might actually surprise you. Roughly 1 in 7 people on Earth has some form of disability. That's huge. It means this isn't some niche topic for a small group of people. This is a core part of the human experience. Chances are, you know and love someone who deals with this every day. And that leads us to this really big, perspective-shifting question. We tend to think of a disability as a medical thing, right? A characteristic of a person's body. But what if that's not the whole story? What if disability is actually created by the world we build, by our designs?
Okay, to really unpack that, we first have to bust a few myths, because the reality of disability is so much more complex and common than most of us think.
This is probably the most important thing to get. Disability is not an on or off switch. It's a huge spectrum. Take Lisa, a designer who's legally blind. Now, a lot of people hear legally blind and assume she sees complete darkness, but that's not her reality. She says she has some vision. She can see light, color, big shapes, just not fine details. That one little word, some, is so powerful. It reminds us that everyone's experience is totally unique.
To help us wrap our heads around this, it can be useful to think in these 5 big categories: vision, hearing, motor, speech, and cognitive. But just remember, each one of these is its own massive spectrum of different abilities and experiences.
All right, now we're getting to the absolute core idea of this whole explainer. This is a concept that can completely change how you see the world and how you approach design.
It's called the inclusion gap. And simply put, it's the mismatch between what a person can do and what the world demands they do. And this is the key takeaway. Disability isn't just something in a person's body. It's born in this gap. It happens when the things we build don't match up with the incredible diversity of human beings.
This is the perfect way to picture it. Look at the building with only stairs. For someone in a wheelchair, that second floor is inaccessible. A barrier exists. But now, add an elevator. Suddenly, the barrier is gone. The person didn't change, their abilities didn't change, the environment changed. The design closed the gap.
And this is where it gets really exciting. Because this gap, it isn't just a problem we have to fix. It is an incredible source of creativity. It's an engine for innovation. Some of our best ideas come from focusing on the people who are most left out by the way things are now.
I mean, think about it. Microphones, they close the gap for voices that can't fill a whole auditorium. Glasses close the gap for eyes that aren't perfectly sharp. And my favorite example, curb cuts. You know, the little ramps on sidewalks? They were designed specifically for wheelchairs. But who uses them? Parents with strollers, travelers with rolling luggage, delivery people with carts. Everybody. Designing for the gap made the world better for all of us.
So, if that's the goal, how do we actually do it? How can we start to spot these gaps and close them? Well, let's look at a practical toolkit with 4 key principles for building more inclusive things.
These 4 things really give us a framework. We're going to talk about supporting multiple senses, providing customization, using the accessibility tools that already exist, and finally, this really cool concept called tracking inclusion debt. So, let's see them in action.
We're going to kick things off with that first principle and check out a great real-world example.
So principle number 1 is all about giving people more than one way to get things done. Can they use your product with their eyes, their ears, their hands, their voice? A fantastic example of this is a recipe app called Crouton.
Instead of just making you type out every recipe, Crouton gets it. You can scan a recipe from a photo if typing is tough, or you can type it in if seeing the photo is the hard part. It even has a hands-free mode you can control with your voice, which is amazing for someone with a motor disability and, let's be honest, for anyone who's ever tried to cook with hands covered in flour. By supporting different senses, it just becomes more useful for everybody.
Okay, principle number 2, customization. This is all about making the app bend to the person, not making the person bend to the app. The weather app Carrot Weather is a master at this. You can set it up to be this super dense, data-heavy dashboard with every chart imaginable. Or you can strip it all the way down to a clean, minimalist view with just the basics. That's great for weather nerds, sure, but it's also a lifesaver for someone with a cognitive disability who might feel overwhelmed by too much information.
Principle number 3 is about not reinventing the wheel. It's about adopting accessibility APIs, basically using the built-in tools that already help things like screen readers work with your app. Check out this puzzle game called Black Box. It uses voiceover, which reads screen elements aloud. Now for one puzzle, a player who is blind just hears this clue. Clue: 360 dashes in a circle. That's it. But it's just enough information for them to figure out, oh, I need to physically rotate my phone 360 degrees. It's an absolutely brilliant way to make a visual game accessible.
And that brings us to our fourth and final principle. And this one is less of a technical rule and more of a mindset shift. Because getting this right isn't about ticking boxes off a checklist. It's an ongoing journey.
And that's Principle 4, tracking your inclusion debt. This is just a way of naming the gaps that still exist in your product. But here's the shift. Instead of seeing that as a failure, you see it as a roadmap. Every single piece of inclusion debt is an opportunity. It's a signpost pointing toward your next great innovation. Just knowing the gap is there is the first step to closing it.
But as we do this work, as we try to close these gaps, there is one non-negotiable golden rule. It's captured perfectly in this powerful slogan from disability rights activists: nothing about us without us. It means you cannot make decisions for a community without their direct and full participation. The best insights, the most brilliant solutions will always come from working with people with disabilities.
So, let's end with a question for you to take with you. Now that you know what an inclusion gap looks like, start noticing the world around you. The apps you use, the buildings you walk into, the products you buy. Where do you see a mismatch? Where do you see a gap just waiting for a new idea, for a brilliant innovation?